Asian currencies, though, in the past year have stabilized, and that's expected to help economic activity throughout the region. But there's a caveat, according to our next guest. Wolfgang Kester is Senior Strategy Officer at Kyriba, which just released its quarterly currency impact report. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, Wolfgang. So let's get started with if Asian currencies saw some stability in the past year, what were the most impactful currencies when it comes to multinationals?
So as you know, at Kyriba, one of the things we do, we look at about 800 North American companies, 400 European companies, and we're about to start including Asian companies as they're reporting more significantly on currency losses. What we've seen from the US corporates is, as they're mentioning the currencies, euro being the number one, no surprise there. Number three being China. That was a bit surprise, as you're starting to see, especially on January 3rd, the outbreaks there again, been a significant trend there. And then number five was Korea, also mentioned. So out of the top five, certainly two Asian currencies, and then of course you have the Brazilian real. So these were really the currencies that the CEOs and CFOs at the analyst calls mentioned most during their last earnings call season.
And just as we heard from Sophie, we have seen some strength recently when it comes to the US dollar, a second consecutive week of gains for the dollar. What are your expectations on the trend here, as this GTV chart on the Bloomberg shows, and the impact of that on multinationals?
What we're expecting is actually an increase in volatility. I don't think anybody right now knows whether the dollar is going to go up or down. I mean, look at what you've seen in the last 48 hours or so. You've seen the Dutch government collapsing. You've seen the Russian government resigning. You've seen, people anticipating Merkel leaving. She was always kind of a stability in the global economy, having on average seen 4 leaders of countries of the G10s through there, seen a lot of that there. And then obviously, and I think this is really important, we should dig into this a little bit more, is how the Chinese are actually starting to see, and you saw Vice Governor Chen Yulu from the BPOC talk about how they're very worried about that $1.9 trillion package that President-elect Biden is going to issue, how that's going to seriously increase volatility and lessen stability in the global economy.
How much is China now kind of a stabilizing factor, the yuan a stabilizing factor for Asian currencies? Do you look more to that as opposed to what the greenback is doing?
Well, I think that what you're actually going to start seeing is there's going to be a trend towards unpegging that more. I think it's very interesting to see how the Chinese are really at the forefront of electronic currency, which eventually means that they'll take the yuan, create an electronic yuan, and actually start unpegging that more. And the tests there have been very interesting to watch how the Chinese are doing it. I actually expected at Singles Day in November 11th that they might actually further push on the yuan. They must have had some trial issues that didn't allow that yet. And so they did another trial run, as you know, about a week ago or so.
Are you looking ahead yet to what the Fed may potentially do? There's been really balanced remarks so far from Fed Chair Powell about the potential for a tapering and, of course, the impact that we quite often do see here in Asia in the currency sphere.
Of course, we look at that, but I think what we see a lot is talking to CEOs and CFOs of corporations, and what they're saying is that investors, as well as banks, and therefore their lenders, are asking them to have a much more holistic view about cash and liquidity. They're really looking at, look, we understand that currencies has an impact on cash and therefore volatility is not good to cash. How do you actually manage that? But then how do you see that cash? How do you move that cash? How do you protect that cash? And really create an active liquidity network where they have a holistic view and therefore management of how to manage the risk and the resulting cash. And I mean, in your previous section, you talked a lot about COVID, obviously, for all the good reasons. And what this COVID has done is really required CEOs and CFOs to sharpen their ability to understand where the cash is all going. What are we doing with accounts payable? If we can't pay every single day, how much do I have? Do I have an optimized selection payment process? What do I do with working capital? How do I think about my supply chain finance? And all that impacted by currencies. So the real question that a lot of CEOs and CFOs are being asked right now is, where are you from a cash flow point of view? And to circle back to that is exactly one of the things that that Vice Governor Chulu was so concerned about is that you really are starting to have fundamentals shifting, and corporations really need to understand where their cash is and how to manage that risk.
Wolfgang, great to have you with us. Wolfgang Kessler, Senior Strategy Officer at Kyriba.
My pleasure.